Okay,
What's
so
up?
we don't have to be spicy. We can just have a friendly conversation. We can just gently
Well,
spar,
I'm always
if
friendly.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Pretti shooting and the Renee Good shooting, I basically have the same point. I don't even know if we're going to disagree. I think that it's going to be ruled legally justified in both cases. I think that they're immoral for different reasons, and we could extrapolate or extract different prescriptions. I think like the qualified immunity shit, or the ending of qualified immunity, or prosecuting ICE for these things based off of current laws. I think that shit's cringe, but I do think we could get good case law out of it. So, how do you feel about it?
These days, I tend to map morality on pretty closely to the legal stuff. I don't view these things as being all that separate. Unfortunately, because of the angles available, I think the Renee one might be on the fence. I don't see how the Pretti shooting, that whole circumstance seemed unbelievable to me from start to finish.
Okay. Well, I think that in order to actually have like a sane conversation about it, and if we get too spicy or whatever, what we could do is we could just move into prescriptions, because if we don't agree on descriptions, we might just fight back and forth. I feel like that's what happened with Pisco and I. We just kind of had an exhaustive battle over not agreeing on descriptive shit. And so at the end of it, we just moved into prescriptions and then we lined up.
Okay.
So in reference to descriptions, I did watch some of your content. I watched your debate with the thick THICC conservative commentator. Weirdly enough, I think that he actually had a lot of my descriptions. But I guess my question is like, you kind of asserted that a law enforcement officer doesn't have the capacity to disperse someone, and somebody should either be detained or free to go. Do you still think that's true?
No, I think that there can be times where you disperse people, but it's like people in a crowd. You're trying to gain control of a situation. Generally, dispersion in a good cop world, most of the things that the cops are doing are things to lower the temperature, or things to reduce the amount of bad stuff happening. What the fuck's the word I'm looking for? You're trying to
Escalation.
de-escalate. Yeah, Jesus, thank you. You're trying to de-escalate. So in my mind, when dispersion is happening for riots, it's because it's usually after curfew, shit's already been fucky, and the cops are trying to just get people to leave the area because they know that if they continue to build and things get more rowdy, it's going to be bad. That's dispersion. Never in my life can I imagine a scenario where you're trying to disperse a single woman by shoving her to the ground. That's...
Okay. Well, let's break that down real quick, because I might actually have an example. And I have before we get into the content, I suppose, Kazra is a community member of mine who is in Iran. They basically told us in chat like a month ago, hey, if I don't show up for a while, it's because we're going to have an internet blackout. People are taken to the streets and it's getting really, 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 really bad. They did survive, so they're back in it, and they want to see more liberals cover the Iranian situation.
Yeah.
I did kind of tell them, like, it's kind of like, it's bad. What do you want me to say? Well, because like we're not going to disagree with the protesters, and obviously like massacring civilians in Iran is terrible.
Yeah.
But they've asked a few times they'd like to see more coverage of it from bigger creators, so they wanted me to say that to you.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's bad. What do you want me to say? So, anyways,
I'm to be clear for the Iranian people, I'm sorry. Yeah, I get a lot of requests like that too. I think I'm not to mean, but I think I would just say that. Like, I think I'm not a fan of the Iranian regime. I don't like them. If they go away, I think that's fine through revolution or whatever else. Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of what I was trying to describe to them. It's like, if there's contention, then you can create a debate, or you can have a fight about it, or you can do coverage, or you can be critical. But I think that, when the take is so obvious and so universally agreed to, it's hard to make content out of it.
That's why I don't cover, unfortunately, and I feel strongly about it, but I don't really cover much of the Ukraine-Russia stuff, because it's like that's so obviously one-sided to me. Like, it's so obviously horrible.
Yeah, we need it. Somebody said it in chat. We need an Iranian Anna.
Yeah.
So, all right, so start working on that, Kazra. But anyways, so let's get into the shooting or whatever. So, or let's get into the breakdown of events. So, with Renee Good, that way we can move into Pretti really quickly. I think that since you're saying that the Renee Good shooting is more in dispute, obviously I think what could be taken out of that is the concept of officer caused jeopardy. which is a law enforcement officer puts themselves either negligently or maliciously into a scenario that then forces them to use force that results in death and injury. And we probably need to either write a law or have some kind of new case law that says that officers should not do that. And when doing so, I would say they should open themselves up to civil penalty. But a lot of liberals and progressives in my chat says that it should open them up to criminal penalties as well. So do we just kind of agree that officer caused jeopardy should be the concept that's extracted from the Renee Good shooting?
The analysis that the court laid out in Barnes v. Felix had to do with the totality of the circumstances leading up to the event to know whether or not a reasonable officer should have thought that their life was in danger or the other person was putting their life in danger. I don't know if this would include like an analysis that would basically completely like the whole officer-induced thing would be subsumed within it, or if you need that separate thing. Because I'm trying to think of, give me an example of like an officer-induced jeopardy.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think the Felix versus Barnes case is illustrative, but I even think the Renee Good case is illustrative. So, at least according to Wick, basing it off of Wick TV, he was wicking out the other day. I was watching some of his content. There is a DHS policy, Department of Homeland Security policy, that effectively states that unless absolutely necessary, you should not walk in front of running vehicles. Mm-hmm. And that policy is in force with ICE and CBP. And that also this officer has been dragged and gotten stitches by being dragged by a vehicle previously. Okay. So for me, there's multiple avenues of approach to this vehicle. He kind of intentionally walks in front of it once, then he films the driver, then he films the license plate, then he walks back around the vehicle, then he sees his friends are moving to detain the driver, then he walks in front of the vehicle again. So for me, I would be saying that would be like negligent officer-caused jeopardy that should be trained against and potentially should open up the department to civil suit for wrongful death.
Potentially, yeah. The only rule I would be worried about there is like and I think the Supreme Court has ruled this, and I think they agree with this. Just because you mess up somewhere doesn't preclude your right to self-defense in other cases, right? So like, let's say an officer is serving a warrant and they go to the wrong address, and then when they enter the building, somebody tries to attack them and the officer defends themselves and ends up killing the other person. Like technically that might be considered like an officer-induced jeopardy or whatever, but I don't think the officer should lose the right to defend themselves. I think
that's where I think malice or negligence need to be a component of whatever case law comes out. So the reason why I would say that this is potentially negligent is because actually of being it being in policy, him getting dragged previously and injured previously, him walking in front of the vehicle.
I will say, have you seen the video of him getting dragged previously?
No, I haven't actually.
So, not to bootlick or whatever, and I'm going to have the totally opposite take of you by the end of this conversation, okay? But, like, that seemed fair from the officer there. Like, I think they were trying to apprehend or detain a person, and he was, like, reaching in, already doing it, and then the guy started to fucking take off when his hand was already through the thing. From the video that I saw of that, I don't think it was anything remotely similar to the Renee Good thing. I know people are bringing that one up a lot, but it seemed fair just from the little I saw of the officer conduct. But yeah, I'm just saying that. Okay.
Yeah. Well, reaching into a vehicle, I think, should be treated differently because, once again, that's like whenever possible, you shouldn't reach into a vehicle. But whenever possible is like a key term there, because if you're trying to detain or arrest somebody who's in a vehicle and you need to reach in order to open the door to detain said person, then you're obviously taking a risk, but that's necessary to do your job.
For sure.
Whereas I would say with multiple avenues of approach and stated policy, and if this lady fled or whatever, you already have her license plate in her face, I don't think that stepping in front of the vehicle is necessary to execute your job.
For sure, yeah. So I would say, here's my big issue, using kind of the totality of circumstances analysis. This is my issue. I don't think a reasonable officer. Now, there are things that could change my mind on this. If we got all of his cell phone footage and she was like making threats or saying crazy shit, then I would change my opinion on this. But I don't think a reasonable officer should have thought that she was like trying to kill him, that his life was in danger there. I think a reasonable officer at that point should have thought, oh, she's probably trying to leave. It seemed like he was acting more out of like fear and frustration, or not fear and frustration, anger and frustration, than a genuine concern for his safety. That's my big issue. Yeah.
So something that I would like to add, though, to the nuance of the scenario is that, like, especially with my own experiences in law enforcement, fear and anger are oftentimes deeply correlated. And what I mean by that is like anger is oftentimes used to mask fear. And so for me, like the reason why I feel like you articulated it the way that you articulated it is because you didn't want to say fear, because if you say fear, then you're kind of admitting that, like, you know, he was potentially in danger. Whereas if you say anger, then it seems like, you know, he's irrational. But what I would say is that, like, you know, once again, fear and anger are closely correlated. Not just that, but I would argue that intent actually doesn't really have necessarily anything to do with imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. As an example, I would say that schizophrenics and type 1 diabetics don't have the requisite presence of mind to intend to hurt people, and yet they can still be deadly threats.
Sure.
Yeah, so intent matters, but it's not the end of the totality of circumstances.
Sure. Hold on, wait. Give me one quick second, okay? I'm just running there and picking stuff up. So if I see people shoot, I'm running the other way, okay? Just letting you know. Trying to get to the heaven cues is what I'm going for. Just as a heads up. Okay. Okay, teasing apart some of these things. So I think intent does matter. Or rather, the officer is always trying to discern intent. I think that, I'm not going to accuse you of doing this, but sometimes a game is being played when people talk about how intent doesn't matter in their analysis. And like in a very limited sense, that's true, but you discerning intent from the other person is, that's where the analysis really is. So for instance, if a person is, I'm trying to think. If I'm like roughhousing,
it's
you know, with a friend,
totality of circumstances,
if you and me,
if she was 1 foot to the right, then the shooting would be completely unjustified. I mean,
well, no. I think he knew that she wasn't trying to kill him. I don't think he ever thought that at any point.
She was probably fleeing and eluding.
Yeah. So I don't think he ever had that idea in his mind. I think he was just upset, and I don't think that's a reason to kill somebody.
Maybe, but just as
wait. What do you mean maybe? I feel like we should be able to agree on that.
I'll give you a specific example. So I think we both agree that the articulable thing is imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. And let's say there was like a type 1 diabetic who's driving towards a daycare with kids. They don't have the requisite intent to hit or kill anybody, but you shoot them anyways in the hopes that you strike them in such a way that, you know, you get them off target or whatever in an attempt to preserve life. So that's kind of where, like, the piecing out the intent as not being, it can be part of the totality of circumstances, but the intent to hurt or maim or kill others is not necessarily like going to preclude you from action. So for instance, let's say
wait. So real quick. So I agree with you there in that it might not necessarily matter, but if you knew that the person was a type 1 diabetic and you were in a room with them or something, like if you were a cop and you went into a room and a guy is acting like a person having hypoglycemic shock, like the guys, they might look drunk or out of it, or you don't know if they're trying to be weird or do some fuck shit and kill you, right? Because when people start acting weird like that, a whole bunch of shit can happen. But if you know that they're a type 1 diabetic, well, that would change your calculation quite a bit. Because you say, oh, well, this person's a type 1 diabetic. Like, I'm not going to assume this person's trying to kill me. There's another, like, very reasonable explanation for their kind of weird behavior right now.
Yeah, but even within that example, I actually like that example a lot because I have a supervisor who had that exact scenario happen. So he goes to a type 1 diabetic's house and they're having an episode. They're, you know, hypoglycemic, so they're confused and they're irritable and they're angry, and they're not recognizing their family members. And what they're doing is they're taking a dog leash and with the metal side out, and they're flinging it around like Indiana Jones and whipping their family members in the face. So obviously that's like violence. It's not deadly threat, it's not deadly force, but it is violence. And so because the family had already notified him that he's a type 1 diabetic, the approach there wasn't to just shoot the guy for beating the fuck out of people with a metal dog leash. It was to actually slow down, catch the leash in an arm, charge him, tackle him, arrest him, get him to the hospital, right? So absolutely that's the right thing that could have been done. However, exact same scenario, different weapon. Let's say that it's a knife instead of a dog leash. We would still say that the intent wasn't there to necessarily hurt people. He's experiencing a medical episode. But if he tried to stab people, then you might shoot him. And
sure.
I think that's the same thing with Renee Good.
Huge difference here, okay? So I understand and I agree with everything you said so far, but the huge difference here is dual use objects versus single-use objects. So like if somebody has a knife or they're throwing a leash around or whatever, right? Like you're basically only using this to hurt somebody. But for driving a car, like we can think of a very like the vast majority of people that are driving their car are not driving their car to kill another person. You know, we agree on that, right?
Yeah, kind of. I think I could be a smartass and say like, well, a dog leash is meant for walking dogs, and a knife is meant for cutting food. But
well,
yeah,
sure,
like,
but if a person was having a diabetic,
if
a person was having a diabetic shock or whatever, and they were walking their dog, we wouldn't assume that they're going to use the leash to do crazy shit, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. However, let's say let's do the identical scenario. Let's move the officer 1 foot to the left. That way, even though Renee Good is trying to flee and elude, and she doesn't have the intent to strike and kill the officer, but she's being reckless in the way that she's escaping, and there's a high probability that she's going to run him over and then get him trapped under the tires. At that point, in your moral calculus, does he have the ability to act?
So I would say no here, because this is another weird thing. I don't think that this is actually like a defensive action. I don't think you're...
Why? I can guess why, but I'd rather you tell me why.
I would just go and leave. Just leave. Because the car's still moving. You're not stopping the car with some gunshots.
Well, right. So I got into this with Pisco, so hopefully we can fast forward a healthy chunk of the conversation. So let's say that a driver is driving right for you, and they're intending to hit you. And you have let's say they're 20 yards away or something like that, and you have the opportunity to shoot or not shoot, and they're 20 yards away. What do you shoot? Yes or no, and why?
Probably never shooting. One, because I don't know if I could acquire a target and aim and shoot and hit that fast. Two, I don't even know what it would look like shooting through a windshield. I don't know what those shots even look like at a distance where you can see somebody reliably. And three, because it's not optimizing for my survival. Even if I were to shoot and hit every single shot, that might be even less optimal. Like I would imagine trying to move to the side is going to be better than shooting, and then who knows which direction the car is going to veer off into. I might shoot them and then try to dodge and then get hit by the car veering off to the side. Or I might shoot them and hit them, but it doesn't actually... I would need like a headshot or a spine shot to like actually stop them completely. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it optimizes for survival at all. Okay.
So I'm trying to... I'm not saying these things because I think they're analogous. I think I'm testing the limits of your answer. So let's say that there's a car bomb. Like it's a VB IED.
Okay.
So like if it gets past you, it's going to hurt other people. So
yes.
What's your answer there?
Are you shooting and blowing the car and bomb up or something, or?
Well, you're trying to kill the driver.
Yeah.
You're trying to kill the driver because hopefully that gives distance. If you kill the driver and the driver crashes or loses control of the vehicle, or he gets afraid and he slams on the brakes or something like that, you don't have a guarantee that you're preserving your own life, but you do have a statistical probability that you're reducing the chance of the driver getting to his target, which is behind you.
Oh, yeah, that's probably good. Yeah.
Okay. Then also just testing hypotheticals. And once again, I'm not saying this is analogous to the scenario. I'm just testing the limits of the idea. Let's say that you're fucking wheelchair bound or something, or you're trapped. Your feet are trapped in cement. Okay. So, so you do not have the ability to move. You cannot move reasonably. This guy's bearing down on you. So you're either going to die because you're going to get hit, or you can shoot and then maybe roll the dice proverbially. What are you doing?
You can shoot and maybe get hit, or you can roll the dice by wheeling. You can't wheel out of the way, basically?
Yeah.
Then I guess you just shoot. Then I guess
get hit or you shoot. So what are the?
Fuck. Might as well shoot at that point. Fuck them.
Right. So I guess the thing here is that like you have a moral intuition that I think is fine. To say that like, well, I don't think that 2 feet away, several shots to the windshield, I don't think that this is going to affect the outcome, or arguably it could even make it worse because let's say they dead foot and they slam on the accelerator. I've actually exacerbated the scenario, but I don't think that this is like enshrined into law or policy.
Well, so it is, just to be clear, so you're crystal clear, it is in policy. You're not supposed to put yourself in front of moving vehicles. That's like non-controversial. It's not debated. That's in.
Right. But then I'm talking about shooting into a vehicle.
So for shooting into a vehicle, what I've seen on this, and I understand this to be true, we're going to go to Buried City. I just want to find the roller boys, okay? I need to turn those in, okay?
You just do runs. I got to do D&D.
Okay. Be careful. Hop on elevator. is we sometimes people make this mistake, or I think that people are doing the analysis of self-defense when the analysis that's actually happening is the person has shown a propensity to commit a violent felony, so you want to stop them. So for instance, let's say that a bunch of officers have somebody pulled over, and they have this guy pulled over, and let's say that the guy slams on the accelerator, and there are like 3 cops in front of him or whatever, and he screams out like, "I'm gonna kill you, get out of my way, I'm gonna get out of here." And let's say the cops can move to the side like super easily. I think the cops are within their right to shoot him as he's fleeing, even once the car's passed. But it's not because they're shooting in self-defense. It's because he's shown the propensity to commit a violent crime, and in the fact that he's shown that, if you let him flee and then he kills somebody, like that's kind of on you, you know.
Returning to the actually, what you said amends an earlier statement, but I'll let you finish.
Yeah. So returning to the Renee Good thing, I don't think that this cop at any point thought that she was trying to kill somebody, or that she had the propensity to kill somebody, or was willing to kill somebody to escape. I don't think a reasonable officer ever. I don't think, unless the only thing I would say with Judge's statement is maybe there's some crazy footage on his cell phone that she said some things that would change my mind on that. But otherwise, I don't think he ever had that thought. I think he just got mad.
Okay, then I want to amend an earlier statement where I was saying like what we should get from Felix versus Barnes and from the Renee Good shooting is we should get officer caused jeopardy. I think there should be a violent felony exception to officer caused jeopardy, where, for instance, in Felix Barnes, the officer jumped onto. Correct me if I'm wrong. But they were detaining someone who had unpaid toll violations. It was his girlfriend's car. He takes off, and one of the officers jumps onto the skid of the vehicle. And then using the fact that the guy is speeding up and not obeying lawful commands, he says, okay, well, this is posing imminent threat of death or great bodily harm to me, and then he shoots and kills the driver.
Well, I think he was also stuck as well, because he was kind of like up on the car when he took his gun out, because the guy, I think, threatened to drive away or seemed like he was going to drive away. I need to reread it. It's only 17 pages, it's not that long. But I think that what happens is the car starts to drive, and you know when a car drives forward, if the door was open, the door closed on him, so he was basically stuck in the car, and then the guy started driving forward, and I think that's when the officer started shooting, which I think is super fair. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then at that point, I would basically say that he wasn't intending to cause officer caused jeopardy or whatever. Therefore, this rule wouldn't apply. But let's make it a little bit more simple. Let's say that the officer, rather than getting like trapped in the door, or there's some kind of like proximity issue that forces him to stand on the vehicle, let's say they're like pulled on the shoulder of a tunnel or something. And so there's only a foot gap, but he wants to get into the car from the passenger side because the driver's side is too dangerous. And then he steps onto the vehicle that way, and the vehicle takes off, and in instinct he grabs it. I don't think he should be held accountable for that. However, let's make it a little bit more simple. Let's say that all he has is unpaid tolls, and when the car is starting to take off, he has an option, which is step back, write a warrant for this guy's arrest, and have law enforcement officers pick him up for fleeing and eluding later, or he can step onto the vehicle and effect an arrest at that time. I would say that policy and morality should dictate that he lets the guy go and then writes a warrant for his arrest to be picked up at a later time. And if he jumps onto the car for toll violations, then that could be construed as officer caused jeopardy.
Yeah, potentially, sure. But I think policy is basically already maps onto this. Like in a lot of cities, they won't chase somebody past a certain speed threshold because it presents too much of a risk to the public, unless they're chasing somebody with like outstanding like violent warrants or something, right?
Unless it's a violent felony.
Yeah,
and that's exactly where I was going to go. So I think that there should be a violent felony exception where, for instance, let's say that this guy was like a kidnapper or a rapist or a murderer. Mm-hmm. Then at that point, I think that you should be able to do like Rambo sliding on the top of the car, you know.
Sure. Okay. So I don't think we necessarily disagree on any of this. I don't know how any of this applies to the Renee Good situation though.
It probably doesn't, and to be honest, I think we would probably just bounce back and forth to the point that, like, I don't want to get too spicy about it, where what would happen is I would argue that the officer is either going to argue or was in imminent fear of death or great bodily harm and therefore pulled the trigger, whereas you would say that that was not reasonable.
Well,
and
so
here's
the question. Did anything happen up to the point of her pushing the accelerator? Was there anything that happened that would have led this officer to believe that she was capable and willing to commit violence?
I would say the fleeing and eluding thing with like
up to. I'm saying up to.
Life. But also there's a reason here. There's a reason why I didn't accept this argument from my chat. If you wanted to expand a little bit more, you could. But I do have something that I wanted to tell you that directly addresses what you said.
Sure. Well, yeah. I want just my first thing is just before we even advance much, I'm just up to the point of her driving away, like before that happened. So up to that, do you think this guy has any reason to believe that she would be capable of committing violence or doing anything violent?
Not really. But I also want to articulate something that I think addresses your point.
Okay. Wait, when you say not really, I feel like I got a yes or no on this. Like, is there anything that makes it seem like this woman is going to commit a violent crime or be violent or do anything like that?
No.
Okay.
But,
that's okay.
But I think my articulation is still going to address what we're talking about.
Yeah, okay. Just make sure we agree on that, yeah.
So, there's a video that I was able to find while I was covering this. It's something that is actually brought up in police training classes, and effectively, it's a domestic violence dispute. And by the way, like, domestics, you know, they're hairy, this, that, the other. I've actually always had a relatively good experience on domestic violence disputes because I like to use verbal judo to de-escalate situations, and I think that I was able to be on my guard and protect myself while also still being ready for something to pop off if it did pop off.
Okay.
But basically what happens is, I think it's in... I don't even want to guess. I thought it was in Las Vegas, but I could be wrong. But effectively what happens is they show up to a DV. There's no real signs of battery. They're interviewing both parties. An officer walks out with the guy. The guy's wearing a hoodie or a parka. And they're actually having like a really chill conversation where they're super nice. Like the cop is super nice. The detainee is super nice. They're like, oh yeah, like I know you got to do what you got to do. And they're just kind of like shooting the shit like everything is totally normal. Well, what ends up happening is it is cold. So the guy has his hands in his hoodie. And the cop says, okay, well, you know, everything's fine. We're still investigating or whatever. I need to pat you down for weapons just to make sure that, you know, everything's Gucci and you're not a threat to me or other people or whatever. And what ends up happening is the guy initially is like, oh, yeah, that's cool. I don't have anything on me. But then as the cop goes to like actually pat him down, the dude pulls a revolver, shoots him in the face and kills him. And this is caught on body camera. And so if you asked me the same question of, was this guy showing any signs of violence? My answer would have been no. It would have been the opposite. I would have been like, he's compliant, he's answering questions, he's being polite, he's saying, yes, sir, no, sir. Like, this is like an ideal detainee in many ways. And yet, you know, you flip from ideal detainee to dead in like a few seconds.
Okay, that has no bearing on anything I just said, though.
No, it does.
It doesn't, right? This is the whole like you agree that like hold on.
Renee Good was a violent person prior to her driving, and I was saying that that's not necessarily relevant.
It is relevant. Hold on. If I make the statement, most women are shorter than most men. Do you agree? Do you fully agree with that statement 100%?
Most women are shorter than most men. Yes.
Okay. You wouldn't say that. Well, I know a tall woman, right? You would agree with the statement, right? Okay. The majority of the time, people's behaviors are dictating and showcasing their intent, right? Now, I haven't seen this officer interaction with a guy, and not every officer plays every single interaction by the book, and I understand that. But, like, there is a reason why you detain people in a certain way, right? The reason why the cops tell you to turn the other way is because if you can't see them, it's harder for you to plot out some bad shit. The reason why if a cop is away from you, usually they'll tell you to put your hands on your head and not behind your back, is because behind your back it's easier to reach for stuff. On the back of your head, it's not, right? Now, I'm not going to blame this cop. This might have been a tragic situation where the guy just played it really well and then got him at the end. But police officers are still, one of the reasons why cops talk to people so much is to kind of get a feel for the type of person they are, to see if they seem like they're going to do some fuck shit or not. And that's going to be generally pointing in a certain direction, and that's going to play into the officer deciding if a person is a risk or not. It can't just be that because one guy was really sneaky one time, every officer is going to treat every situation the same way.
No, I agree with the assessment that you're not going to treat every situation the same way. So for instance, like when I have a grandma who's being super sweet to me on the side of the road with no other driver's history, I don't, and even if she says she has a pistol, I don't expect her to shoot me in the face, right? Sure. But I'm also basing it off of probability. And then with probability, you know, I think it is easier to bet your life off of probability when you're not actively doing shit. Whereas when you're on the road and you do like 1,000 interactions time after time after time after time, and then you do bump into sociopaths who are incredibly good at lying, then it does make you paranoid and distrustful of the general public, because the green flags that you've gotten from some people ended up being some of the worst red flags that you ever dealt with.
Okay, so what I'm taking from what you're saying is that a cop should treat every single person the exact same way, at all points in the interaction, no matter how the person is acting. That's what you're selling me.
I would say you should trust but verify.
Of course, I agree with that. Wait, let me grab a drink real quick. 1 second.
Yep.
Okay. So the reason why I said that the whole thing is not relevant is because the story. Now, maybe she was a secret murderer and she was going to do some crazy secret shit. We just don't know that because we can't literally see into her mind. But the narrative that was sold in terms of looking at everything that's happening is that she just seems like an ordinary soccer wine lesbo mom or whatever, right? Yeah. And up to the moment of her driving forward, at least, we have no reason to think anything different, right?
Sure. But I would say putting it in reverse and then putting it in drive when you're being detained changes that calculation.
A little bit, but even at that point, does your mind immediately jump to this person is trying to kill me rather than this person just trying to drive away?
No. I do think that anyone with above average emotional IQ would think that Renee Good was fleeing, not trying to kill people.
Okay, well then in that case, that would be my whole argument then, is that he shouldn't have shot her because she's not trying to kill him.
But then we get back to is intent necessary to pose a threat of imminent threat of death or great bodily harm? Then we get into the probability of shooting her. Does that actually increase your chances of survival?
Well, the intent. My understanding of the intent here, he would ascertain that her intent is probably just to leave. He's literally standing right next to the car. It's not like she's accelerating from 100 yards away and she's going to hit him at 90 miles an hour. And he has the ability, obviously, very easily to just step aside, which he did.
Yeah, but I think the argument from the cop would be that he was stepping aside simultaneous to pulling his pistol.
Okay, but he literally cleared the entire car. I guess it's up for debate whether or not he got hit. I would say it doesn't seem like he did. And if he did, it was incredibly minor. But it doesn't seem like at any point up to her driving that she was the kind of person to try to run him over with her vehicle. And then I think this is also kind of hurt by the fact that the other two cops didn't draw their weapons. They didn't view her as being like that at all. So we have an officer who, for some reason, after her backing up, decides to basically stand in front of her car. And then as soon as she starts going forward, he starts to develop this feeling I think she's trying to kill me. That just doesn't seem like good officer conduct there. I don't think a reasonable officer would have thought in that situation that she's trying to kill me.
Well, that's where I think that this is going to boil down to a debate between lawyers and probably the state attorney's office over whether or not the officer is going to be able to articulate imminent threat of death or great bodily harm, and whether or not case law or current laws are going to be enough to charge him, let alone convict him. But that's where I think that we land on bad descriptive ground, where I start fighting my chat and calling them arslers and all that kind of stuff. Whereas realistically, prescriptively, we might have overlap. So for instance, I would argue that this officer, regardless of whether or not he was in imminent threat of death or great bodily harm, and you could, analyze the TOC, he officer-caused jeopardy by walking in front of the vehicle against department policy twice. He did not have a violent felony that I think would be an exception to what should be the law for officer-caused jeopardy. And, if you wanted to, let's say that Pisco and you were yeah, we're lawyers. We're 100% going to try to charge this guy and convict him. Y'all can fight it out in fucking court. But for me, I think the officer-caused jeopardy should probably open people up to civil suit to the institution, because then the institution has a double incentive. Well, actually, maybe a double incentive is the wrong way to say it. Number one, the institution, if they cause a reckless or negligent death, in Renee Good's case, they could pay the widow $500,000 or $1 million. Does that bring their partner back? Absolutely not. But is it going to help with expenses going forward with their children? Absolutely. And then same thing with what it would also do is it would cause them to look at their officers from a liability standpoint and fire the ones who are negligent or malicious in their conduct in such a way that is a civil liability for the department.
So civil stuff is there to make people whole again. Now, obviously, you can't make somebody necessarily, you can't bring a person back to life, but like you can give them some kind of financial recompense. Criminal stuff is here because there are things that the public has decided are reprehensible behavior that we can't abide. If a police officer is finding ways to, what I would say in this circumstance would be akin to murder, that's not a thing that I only want them to be held civilly liable for. I would want them to be held criminally liable for it as well. I don't think we should have a society where we've created a position where people could basically murder people and only be sued for it.
Sure. And this is where like I kind of have to like throw my hands up because I don't think we agree on whether or not this is murder, and I also don't know if we agree on what the likely outcome of a court proceeding is going to be.
Sure.
Therefore,
well, but I guess do you think
I could just like spurg out and scream at you for the next hour that
Sure.
it's not murder, but then that's not going to be productive.
Do we think that okay, so we agree that up to the point of the shooting, the cop didn't seem to have any reason to think that she was like a murderous, evil person who was trying to kill anybody, right? Do you
Correct.
think at the point that he shoots her, do you think in his mind he's genuinely thinking like, oh God, she's trying to kill me? Or do you think it's more likely he was thinking like, this fucking bitch?
Maybe it could be this fucking bitch, but it's also, imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. Like I said, the intent can be a part of the totality of circumstances that you analyze, but it's not exclusive.
It's not exclusive, but in this case, it's going to be pretty close because it's a dual use thing. It's a car, right? And her using the car to drive away is a totally legal, valid thing. It's not like wielding a gun or a knife.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
You could say understandable. I don't think you can say like legal.
What do you mean by that?
So she's not allowed to drive away.
Sure. No, yeah, sure. I'm just saying that, like, if somebody, aside from, like, a goofy scenario where somebody runs into a kitchen and you find out after you kill them that they were a chef and they were trying to cut the steak fast, right? That, like, if somebody's running at you with a knife or a gun, there's only one thing that they can do with it. Like, any reasonable person, even a reasonable officer, would think he's trying to kill me. Whereas, like, with a car, while they're driving, well, they could just be trying to drive away, right? Now, that might be flee the scene, sure. And I'm not saying she has the right to flee, especially if, I don't know what the officer said exactly. I heard conflicting reports on what was said, but, like, assuming he was trying to detain her driving away is obstruction and fleeing, right? But, like, at no point is it like, oh, God, she's really trying to kill me. She wants to kill me. I don't think the officer ever really got that vibe.
I think that here we get into perceptions, and it's hard for me to sympathize with the officer because I think that he acted negligently in such a way that resulted in a human death in a way that I myself would never act. But I also don't really jump into the brain of other people and say like when they're afraid of shit, because I know that that's like a spectrum.
Well, but it's an objective test. We have to be able to say what would a reasonable officer have done here, and we want to be able to say that because we give these people the exclusive right to commit violence against us. They have a monopoly on state violence. I think we should hold them to a standard of like, you better be sure when you're using it that you have a good reason to.
But what I would say is that if you go to the objective reasonable standard of a law enforcement officer and then you divorce it from its context, if you say, hey, as a law enforcement officer, you're conducting your duties, you're detaining someone, you're standing in front of a vehicle, they're approximately, 10 feet away, 15 feet away, they're fleeing and eluding, but based off of your perception, you think that there's a high probability of them striking you. Do you use deadly force in order to try to minimize the threat to your life or whatever? I think like a majority of officers are going to say, yeah. But then if you back it out and zoom it out to,
Well, I feel like you just said the opposite of what you were worried about the other person doing, because I feel like what you just gave was a divorce from context, just like a totally vacuum scenario.
Because when you add in 37-year-old lesbian and you walking around the vehicle twice and putting yourself in front of the vehicle, that's the context necessary to say that this is unreasonable. But that itself is not like whether or not the use of force is justified, right?
Sure, but like the things leading up to that, I think are going to influence how reasonable it would be for you to assume something bad is going on here. Let's say that you get a phone call that there is that there's a guy who just broke in and stabbed a lady or whatever, and he's out in his car, and it looks like he's about to, drive away from a neighborhood or whatever, right? And let's say that you show up at this neighborhood, and you see a guy in his car and maybe he's got like what looks like some kind of blood or something on his face or whatever, and you shout at him or you pull up, you're like, hey, get out of your car, and the guy starts to drive away, you might shoot him at that point. And I think probably reasonable, right? You got a call, he matches his description, and now he's driving away. Like, I think totality of circumstances, like, okay, this guy might have just committed a crime, and now he's trying to flee as soon as the cop says something, right? Let's say that you get a similar call. There are two kids that are messing around, and let's say that you pull up, and when you pull up, a guy and a girl like come up in a car, and then you say, hey, what's going on? And then they start driving away. I think in that case, okay, well, it sounds like some kids that were fucking around that maybe shouldn't have been, and there might even be a misdemeanor, public indecency or whatever, but like these guys are probably not lethal or whatever. If you shot at them there, that would be crazy. That would be a bad thing. You shouldn't be shooting at them there. But it's because of like all the circumstances that rolled into when you finally tried to do the detainment, like it would heavily influence how you'd view the circumstances. Now, it might be that the first guy was just cutting a bloody steak and was driving away because he got scared, and it might be that the two teens were actually holding down and brutally raping a young child in the back seat. Like, you don't know that, but just like looking at the totality of the circumstances leading into both these things, like one shoot I think would be totally justified, and the other one is like wild, I think.
Yeah, but I think that might be the divorce in what we're talking about right there. So for instance, like in order to use deadly force, you just have to have the articulable belief of imminent threat of death or great bodily harm, which I think standing in front of a vehicle that's 3 feet away, and then them trying to get past you and striking you with the vehicle, I think is a reasonable understanding of imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. What makes this interaction unreasonable, in my opinion, is the officer caused jeopardy. But that's why I would open it up to officer caused jeopardy. Sounds
well,
like
wait, I think you say articulatable, whatever thing. I don't. When you say this articulable thing, I don't know where this comes from necessarily. Like, that would also depend on the totality of circumstances. If you're told that there is like, if you're told a violent crime is happening, you bust into a room and a whole bunch of people have knives out, fuck, you might start blasting. I don't think necessarily think you should, maybe, but it might be legally defensible. Like, that's crazy. You walk in there, all knives out. If you're told that there's a violent crime that just happened and you bust into a kitchen and there's a whole bunch of people cooking, they all have knives out, you can still articulate the same possible harm, but like they're chefs in a kitchen and they're in a kitchen, so obviously they're gonna have knives out. Like, even though you can articulate the same type of harm, it wouldn't be justified to start blasting.
Yeah, but so hold on. So what's the difference between, let's isolate the variables then real quick. Mm-hmm. So what's the difference between somebody fleeing and eluding and you believing that there's a high probability that you're about to be struck by a vehicle, and somebody who's trying to hit you with the vehicle, but based off of the angles, you think they're going to clip you? Because to me, those are like consequentially the same thing. They have differences in intent, but there's still imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. Therefore, it meets the deadly force threshold.
I think the thing that we're missing here is because the lady, it's possible that lady didn't even really see him or like understand that he was even in front of the car. And because they were so close and there's so much more wiggle room here for what people could be doing, I wouldn't instantly go to this person's trying to kill me.
Right, but then not only do I not think that you and I are going to be able to bridge the gap of our perceptions of descriptive reality. I just don't, I did like a 4-hour struggle session with Pisco. I don't think we're going to be able to bridge this gap. But at the same time, I'm not even sure if it's necessary. Because what would happen is, I like fighting you, I like debating you or whatever. But at the same time, even if we were to go to court, you're not saying anything different than what a prosecutor would say if they thought that they could get the officer charged. And I'm not saying anything different than what the defense attorney would say in the officer's defense. And
well, but the thing is that like the only way you can defend
perception is going to be, I don't know if this gap in perception is going to be bridgeable.
The only way that you can defend what the officer did is to decontextualize it and then back it up into basically vacuumed hypotheticals. That's the only way it seems like you can mount a defense for what the cop did. But when we start to consider everything, like if you say like, well, what if somebody was driving at you while fleeing the scene? What if somebody's going to clip you? Like this is not what happened. What happened is you've got a wino soccer mom lesbian person in a car that you've been interacting with now for, I guess, a couple minutes. And then as you've moved by the vehicle one time, so she had a chance to run you over there if she wanted to, and then you go to walk in front of the vehicle a second time for God knows what reason, and then you see them back up and you don't fucking move. You decide to plant your feet in front of them, and then they turn their wheel to move forward. And what looks to every single driving human being in the world, what looks to be a person who's trying to like just, back out and drive away, you decide that they've decided to kill you or that they're going to kill you. And then you not only shoot, but you pull your gun and shoot. You manage to hold onto both your gun and your phone at the same time, and you totally clear the vehicle, so you don't even get hit. So it seems like even your fear that they could potentially do it unwillingly didn't come to fruition, and neither the other two cops there felt that same fear. So all of these circumstances together is like, I don't know. I don't really think this guy ever thought that she was even a threat, even accidentally, because it was so close. Like, she was going 2 miles an hour, which he bumped him, if that. I don't think that cop ever really. I think he was just mad. I think he was pissed off.
If you want to fight and you want me to articulate the way that I would write this police report from a police perspective that I think would actually result in like a dismissal of the charges, then I mean I could. However,
well, what would you say?
That we're probably not going to get to descriptive consensus, whereas I think prescription is probably where we would have the highest amount of alignment.
Well, but I mean, like, what would you say? Like, do you think that something that I just said there wasn't fair, or am I missing some part of?
No. I think that there's a formula for the way that law enforcement officers.
It can't just be you backing up and saying there is an articulatable harm of imminent bodily. It can't just be you saying that like contextless statement over and over again when we have the whole situation that we can look at.
Want me to take a stab at it?
Sure.
Okay. So while performing my lawful duties in the block of blah Jefferson Street or whatever, I noticed that there was a woman obstructing the roadway, at this and this approximately, 50 yards north of this location. Believing that this person may be subject to a violation of 18 USC 111, I decided to approach the vehicle, make contact with the driver, discern their intentions, and also get identifying information. I walked up to the vehicle. I captured the woman's face on my cell phone device for evidentiary purposes. I walked to the back of the vehicle, and then I obtained their license plate number for, evidentiary purposes. While walking back, towards the front end of the vehicle, I noticed Officer blah and Officer blah giving lawful orders to the subject later identified as Renee Good. Believing that this person was no longer investigation, but actually under detention, I moved my way around the vehicle to assist in the detention of Renee Good via the driver's side door. At that time, Miss Renee Good put herself into reverse and then put herself into drive in such close proximity to myself that I believe that I had imminent fear of death or great bodily harm due to her striking me with the vehicle. At that point, I unholstered my pistol, serial number XYZ and fired several shots in an attempt to end the threat.
Yeah, so I feel like, so I understand this report. Wait, real quick. I understand. Yes, I got this. Okay. So one, I have a killer question. But the second thing first is, that the question would be, well, if she wasn't detained yet, the car was still turned on, why did you move in front of her vehicle when there were two other cops that were in the process of detaining her? Did they appear they needed help at the time? Did they seem like they didn't have the situation under control?
Hold on, right there. So that's a violation of policy, but I think you and I both agree that legality.
Wait, it's not even necessarily policy. No, wait.
Three separate things.
No. First of all, I don't necessarily think that, but this is just a question. I would say, well, why did you feel the need to step in front of the vehicle? If she wasn't being, if she wasn't,
assist my fellow officers detaining the driver.
Did they need help?
Yeah.
Did they say they needed help? What gave you the impression they needed help?
No. Sometimes when you're detaining people, arresting people, people get squirrely. So the more people you have, the easier it is to detain them.
And even if that means that you need to put your life potentially in danger to get over there when it didn't seem like they needed help at all or hadn't requested help at all.
Well, actually, because Miss Good had previously said, I'm not angry at you, when I was stepping in front of the vehicle, I actually thought that there wasn't a high chance of her fleeing today. So I was shocked. I was flabbergasted when she put her vehicle in reverse and then put it in drive forward. I was flabbergasted that she would risk death or injury to myself because prior I thought that she, while not.
Yeah, but then if that's your mindset, then why would you assume? Then how did you go from I was so shocked to that to instead of thinking like, oh, she must be trying to flee. Oop, I need to get out of the way. To like, oh, she's trying to kill me. I need to shoot and kill her. How did you flip so fast on that?
Well, I'm answering as if I was the officer, right? Well, I didn't necessarily believe that Miss Good was trying to kill me, but at the same time, I did believe that she was acting in such a reckless manner that she was posing an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm to myself.
Okay. I mean, I guess that would be what they would go to court over. So here's a killer question. Let's say that he was standing behind her with his phone when he was like recording the back of the vehicle, right? If she would have backed up then, do you think he would have been within his right to unholster his pistol and unload into the front seat?
Weirdly enough, I think that like awareness, probably not, right?
Why not though? Wouldn't it be the exact same thing?
I don't think it would be the same thing because effectively, like and sorry if this is like a logical inconsistency, but I think that there's a general perception, I'm appealing to reasonableness now, that when you're behind a vehicle, unless they have backup cameras, it's actually very common for drivers to be unaware of things that are behind them.
Okay,
And
so
like,
we're both old. I understand that, but we know nowadays every car made in the past 20 years has a backup camera, right?
well, if I would say that would actually probably depend on the context, weirdly enough, of like the backup, you know, because if she throws it in reverse and then like slowly backs up so she can turn or whatever, then obviously I would read that one way. Whereas if she threw it in reverse and I'm standing behind her vehicle and then she like spins out her tires trying to hit me, then yeah, I would obviously read that differently, and I would view that as like a threat of imminent.
Well, it's not like she was fucking flooring it to get away from the cops when she turned her car to the forward and was going to drive away. No.
Well, correct, but let's say.
Well, wait, real quick. We don't know hypotheticals. Just in this one thing. I don't understand why he wouldn't be even more in his right to shoot and kill her, because as you said before, the intent and everything doesn't even matter. Maybe she doesn't even know he's back there. In your world, he still has a right to shoot and kill her because she could be killing him even if she doesn't intend to. So when he's behind her with a phone, if she starts backing up, I feel like in Connor's world, he'd be fully within his right, at least ethically, if not legally, to just mag dump her.
Well, he might be. So for instance, like let's say that let's run it back and let's say that there's a wall there.
No. Right? No, because there's no wall neither. We don't need to make more of a hypothetical. He's standing behind the car as opposed to standing in front of the car. He's got his phone out. He had his phone out in front of the car, and he's trying to do something, and then she starts moving the car. He's behind it instead of in front. Why wouldn't he be able to shoot from behind if you think he's able to shoot from in front?
Well, I mean, he might be able to. So for instance, like let's say that they're backing up slowly. I'll try not to change. I'll try to change as few variables as possible.
I feel like when I saw the video, I feel like she backed up and went forward at about the same speed. It didn't seem like there was a significant change in speed here.
Sure, but let's I'll try to change as few variables as possible. Let's say that she starts backing up towards him and actually does start to run him over or clip him or whatever. And there actually is like a chance of him getting trapped under the wheel well. Yeah, that's a word, right?
Yeah.
So if there was actually the possibility of that happening, I think he could articulate that he's an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. I think you go back to, actually, weirdly enough, Pisco's argument that how does shooting her change the calculus? Because, you know, she's still going to be backing up and the vehicle's still going to back up in idle. So, I mean, that's an interesting thing. But I also think that now you're eliminating some of the variables for TOC, but I'll just let you.
Wait, what do you think I've eliminated? Or I don't understand the response to my question. I feel like you should own that she should be able to be completely killed.
I think this is material. So when she backs up and then she goes to drive forward, you can actually see her cutting the wheel and looking right at the officer. So she's within like an area of observation where she either could or reasonably should see the officer.
I don't know. She's literally talking to, I don't even know if she looks forward. I have to go back and relook at the video because she's got a cop to her left that she's literally talking to as she's backing up and everything. No?
I think there's a moment that was particularly damning for me while I was reviewing the footage. If you check out the officer's cell phone footage, where effectively she is cutting her wheel and she looks forward while cutting her wheel.
Well, hold on, what does cutting her wheel mean when we say it? You mean like just turning her wheel? Is that?
What's that?
When you say cutting her wheel, what does that mean? What are we saying?
Yeah, turning.
Okay, if we're gonna make the statement that she can see the officer, is aware that he's in front of her, is like cognizant of all of this, when I'm sure she's probably stressed and everything now because she's got people shouting and everything, right? But she's like aware of that. Why could I not say, shouldn't the cop be aware that she's not like pointing the car at him? Or if the cop sees her steering the wheel, shouldn't he be making an effort to get out of the way of the vehicle? Because the cop, I don't even think the cop dilly-dallies. I think the cop basically plants his feet. Like he starts to move and then he either comes back or he stops moving, I think after she backs up. So, like, if she can have the wherewithal to see the cop right in front of her and know that she's going to represent a third of the cop, shouldn't the cop know at least? Shouldn't he have more situational awareness? It's literally part of his training and he's outside of the vehicle?
Okay. From an officer's standpoint, absolutely. But then this is also another thing that I get frustrated with this conversation. She's not performing a lawful action. He is. So you're making them morally equivalent in the scenario where his attempt to detain and her attempt to flee the scene are morally equivalent.
No, we're not. No, they're not morally equivalent. She's in the wrong there, okay? But we're not talking about the lawful action of detaining. We're talking about the decision to step in front of her car. He has every right to detain her, from what I've seen, what I understand.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about him detaining her. We're talking about him choosing to place himself in front of her vehicle. And then to think that if she tries to drive away, that she's trying to run him over.
Jeopardy needs to be a thing.
Well, but I don't think we need that extra standard here. I don't think he ever thought that she was going to kill him or that she presented a grave threat or whatever. I think if that was the case, I think he would have dropped his phone. I don't think he would have managed to hold on to it the entire time.
Okay. Well, I'll put money on it. Okay.
What?
I will put $50 on the fact that I don't think this law enforcement officer is going to be charged even at the state level. I'll put an additional $50 on the fact that if he is charged, he will not be convicted. I'll put my money where the mouth is.
I mean, I feel like the
defense attorney rationale that I've articulated today, I think would be successful, and I'm willing to back it up with a little bit of cash.
I mean, whether or not I don't know if they're even gonna have the chance to charge him. I feel like there's a lot of political reasons playing into that, more so than the criminal ones. And then I would have to go and look at the. I don't know if there's extra standards that are governing cop behavior that aren't part of this conversation that somebody hasn't brought in yet. I lean towards him, as much as I don't like it. I think that the Renee good one is more on the fence than the Alex Pretti one. I think it was clearly bad, but I don't see how he can articulate that he genuinely thought his life was in danger. I think that if he was charged, my guess is going to be there's an expression for this for lawyer dudes. It's like it's easy. The charge is hard. The conviction is easy, or something. That like if they can get the judge to approve the charge, I feel like a jury would convict him. But I don't know for political reasons it will ever get to that point. I guess.
Okay. Well, it's up to you. I'll have that standing bet of $50.
I'll do. How about this? I'll do 10 and 50. I'll do $10 on if he gets charged, because at this point I don't think he will for political reasons. But then if he gets charged, I 50 that he'll be convicted of something, manslaughter or greater.
Okay. No, I mean, that's fair. And then, I mean, shit, that's what we spend on ammo and fucking cheeseburgers, so that works.
Okay.
All right. So if you're... What's interesting to me, though, about this conversation is that you kind of said that you don't think officer-caused jeopardy should be extracted from this case. Is that like an in general standard, or do you just feel like it doesn't apply to the case and we can get there where we can get to where you want without officer-caused jeopardy?
I think we can get there with just the totality of cause or circumstance, and then like with department training. I think that.
Okay, but as an ideal, do you still think that officer-caused jeopardy should be enshrined into law, either through case law or legislation?
I don't know. I don't think so. I feel like some officer-caused jeopardy is fine. If there's a guy saying that he's going to go out and murder a bunch of people, and an officer puts himself in between him and that guy, I mean, that's an officer-caused jeopardy. I kind of like that. I think some officer-caused jeopardy is good to avoid greater harm. I think that's okay. I don't know if we need that, unless if you can pose to me a case where it's like, well, what about in this circumstance where the totality of circumstances wouldn't cover it, but an officer-caused jeopardy would cover it, and it would be a greater service of justice. If you can think of a circumstance like that, I can't.
I do think that it should be either enshrined into policy or morality or legality at some point, and I have a specific example. So when I was a law enforcement officer in a city, there was a tactical cop who was on the narcotics team, and he worked with SWAT and this, that, the other. Mm-hmm. And he came on a patrol sometimes, and he was like a huge douchebag. If you're going into a fight, he's a guy that you want watching your back, but he is not a guy that you want to patrol with. And so we get a call about a homeless guy at a pizza shop who's verbally harassing people. The pizza shop wants him trespassed. So me and my supervisor, who's actually pretty cool, we show up and we trespass the guy, and we're writing down his information, and we're, getting ready to serve him a piece of paper, and then he's going to fuck off and we're going to be done. Well, what ends up happening is the tactical cop, because he's a douchebag and he's chasing stats, is that he keeps saying, like, hey, buddy, calm down. Hey, buddy, calm down. Hey, buddy, calm down. Mm-hmm. But he's effectively, like, physically encroaching on the homeless guy repeatedly. And the homeless guy is reading his body language. And it's a homeless guy. He's fucking crazy.
Okay.
So the homeless guy spurgs the fuck out and basically freaks out on the guy. And then the tactical cop arrests him for like, you know, trespass after warning and resisting arrest without violence. And so he gets his stat, and my supervisor and I like actually took him aside after that, and we're like, hey, that was kind of fucked up that you just like took a calm situation, escalated on purpose so you could get an arrest and a stat. And he was like, yeah, well, the body camera is going to show that I tried to verbally de-escalate. So even though I was using my body language to trigger him effectively on purpose, I still got the stat. I still got the arrest. He's out of the city. It was legal, and no jury is going to, you know, side with the homeless guy against me. And for me, that's like obviously so fucking immoral, that while possibly still being legal, that, you know, that should be barred.
Yeah, but then I think there should just be like, you have your use of force continuum, and if you violate that, then you could be held liable for crimes. So assault or whatever. Like, I think that's fully covered by that.
He didn't violate the use of force continuum.
Well, then the use of force continuum should change.
And then he used a minimum amount of force to detain him.
Yeah, but I think then I would argue the use of force continuum should change. I think there is an issue due to the nature of what cops do for work. I think it's hard to deal with mentally ill people as well. I don't know if it needs to cover additional training or additional background or whatever, because mentally ill people unfortunately can present as people who are intoxicated or who are just being shady as fuck, and that's a difficult thing to deal with. But I mean, that would be a policy thing, not like a officer-induced jeopardy thing, I think.
Yeah, maybe. So either way, I guess we don't have to craft the perfect legislation or policy today. But if I could, I thought that behavior, while possibly legal, was morally objectionable for like 10,000 fucking reasons. So if I could ban that behavior from law enforcement, then I would.
Sure. I agree with that behavior you're talking about. I just don't know if you need officer-induced jeopardy to do it, but sure. Okay.
Well, I think the reason why I think officer-caused jeopardy actually covers what I described, though, is that, like, we had the opportunity to serve our law enforcement purpose, which was to give this guy a trespass and then tell him to fuck off, and then at that point, you know, our job's done. Whereas this guy basically instigated a use of force scenario or, like, hostility on behalf of the homeless person. He instigated consciously in order to obtain an arrest.
I guess my issue would be is that, like, what does that look like? Is because that would be argued then in every single interaction, because some people can become irate by just asking basic questions, right? I think that cops will do this, where they just like, you know, they chat with you like, hey, you know, where are you headed? Where you from? Where do you live? Like, you don't have to answer any of these questions. You could say, you know, fuck you, I'm not detained or whatever, right? But like, cops will ask these questions just get like a general feel of like, what, you know, does this person seem weird? Is he from around here? And you could theoretically induce a scenario where the person becomes super agitated and then a fight breaks out as a result of that. But like, is that something I would want the officer to be liable for? No.
No,
but also I wouldn't even want that to be like a potential charge then, that like now we have to fight this on every single perp interaction, where people can say, well, he made me fight him because he tried to arrest me and, you know, I got scared or whatever. It's like, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, weirdly enough, this is part of the reason why I wouldn't make it criminal, because I don't think that like cops should be held accountable that way. Although I do think that if you made it civil, what you would do is you would effectively open people up. It would have
suing the cops for basically every single interaction.
Hold on, I got an answer for you. You're asking a question, or you're not asking a question. You're implying a question.
Okay.
So I think that if you open it up for civil, then you could limit it to instances that resulted in death or injury. And then you would also have to show a departure from, you know, policy or reasonableness that resulted in the death or injury. So, for instance, like with Felix versus Barnes, I know that you said that you actually think Felix versus Barnes was reasonable, but if it was the identical situation, but the guy jumped onto the skid on purpose, then that's where I would say that would probably be officer-caused jeopardy, and therefore open the department up to wrongful death.
Okay, sure. You think the Alex Pretti shooting, you think that was a justified one?
Yeah, so let's open up that can of worms. Legally justified, morally horrific. So we need to peel that apart, I suppose.
Okay.
So where do you want to start there?
When you say legally and ethically are like very different, how are you separating these so much in your mind, I guess? Or why do you separate these so much in your mind?
Yeah, so maybe I'm using these terms incorrectly. I'm using lay understandings, but I would say morality is like personal conduct, good or bad analysis.
Mm-hmm.
I would say ethics is the same thing, but it carries like a social connotation, like a social prescription connotation. And then I would say that legal, in my opinion, is just like, it is enshrined ethics or enshrined morality, but we also tolerate a bunch of things that are unethical but still legal. We haven't codified every unethical behavior as illegal, so there's a differentiation there.
Okay, sure, but I think when we're talking about like murder and killing, I think we're probably in the realm of legality here, like easily more so than.
Yeah, sure. So I think that once again, I would bet dollars to donuts. You know, $50 they're not even charged. $50 they're if charged, they're not convicted. I would do the same thing on the Pretti shooting.
Okay, looking at so walking through the Pretti shooting. So I guess on the first
thing, do you want
thing,
to start with the initial interaction from the first officer?
the initial interaction from the first officer.
Like the officer who pushed the woman and pepper sprayed?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of walking through. And that interaction, do you feel like should the officer have pushed that lady? Was there a reason to do that?
I don't. Okay, 90%. He had sand in it. I need you to hear this, and I need your chat to hear it. 90%, that guy had sand in his vagina. Okay, that's what happened. However, the remaining 10% could be argued and will be argued successfully in court that those women could have been detained or dispersed based off of 18 USC 111.
Has there ever been an example of this type of disbursement happening when it's just a single person standing in front of you?
Absolutely. This is actually something that I wanted to talk to you about that I have a specific anecdote for.
Well, wait. I'm just curious. Can you differentiate between this? How could I not say that a cop could literally attack anybody that he wants and just say that he's dispersing them?
Because you have to have an inciting crime.
So what was the lady doing that necessitated her being pushed into the snowbank?
18 USC 111, which is like the forcibly obstructing, impeding, intimidating,
what was she,
whatever.
Yeah, so what was she doing at that point when she's walking?
I would say that the two ladies were standing 6 feet away from a law enforcement vehicle in the middle of the roadway, yelling insults at, ICE personnel, and also potentially obstructing their vehicle if they wanted to go in reverse.
Okay, so I don't think that's the case. I think.
Well, do you think that they would be able to say that and then detain those people under 18 USC 111?
No,
because it was ultimately thrown out.
Well, so at the point that he shoves her, she's literally on the other side of the street.
Yeah, after he's already given them lawful orders to disperse and gotten them out of the street.
Mm-hmm. So she's been dispersed.
No, she's not out of the roadway.
She's walking. She's on the other side of the street. She's no longer anywhere near any of the ICE people.
Is she out of the roadway? I actually had to pull up a picture of a road in order to fight my...
At the point when he shoves her, she's not completely out of the roadway, but standing in the street there is not a crime, and you can't be shoved by a cop.
Or is it not? Is it a local crime? Is it a federal crime? Or is it not a crime at all?
I don't believe that walking in the street is a crime.
No, walking across the street isn't a crime, but walking across the street not at a designated crosswalk area is jaywalking.
Is that defined in every single thing as jaywalking? How are you able to get to your car? How can you get to your car to get into the driver's seat or whatever if you have to go across into the street a little bit? Is that jaywalking?
No. As a matter of fact, we could look up like the Minnesota jaywalking statute. Sure. Additionally, what your chat is already going to do, so I'm going to preempt the argumentation, is that federal officers can't enforce traffic laws. So I can preempt that.
Sure.
They can call local law enforcement in order to enforce said traffic laws, but they themselves can't enforce local traffic laws.
Sure. So
but I'm trying to make the distinction that you're saying, like, no, you can just walk into the middle of the roadway. That's just
she's not. Okay, hold on, wait. Fuck. Somebody find the video, because I don't want to mince words. She's not in the middle of the street. She's like standing in front of another car that's parked, is my understanding. I think it's parked.
By the double yellow. Like when the interaction first starts, she's in the middle with the double yellow.
We're not talking about when the interaction. Okay, hold on.
Is directing traffic in the center of the
roadway.
roadway.
When you talk like this makes me think that you know that you're wrong, because you're starting to mince words. You just said when the interaction starts. I didn't say when the interaction starts. I said at the point when the officer shoves her, she's no longer in the middle of the street. He shoves her.
Why is middle of the street relevant? If she's being told to get onto the sidewalk and she's still in the roadway, how is being in the parking area of said roadway like being dispersed?
If a cop tells you to cross to get out of the road and you turn around and you start walking to the sidewalk and then the cop runs up behind you and he shoves you into the ground, do you think the cop is in the right to do that?
Is that what happened?
First I'm just asking that question. That is what happened, yes. But do you think the cop...
No, it's not what happened.
It is what happened.
And this is where we can start fighting a little bit. I'll be gentle. We can spar a little. So you think that what happened was Well, and by the way, this might be a straw man, but I want to illustrate how it's differentiating from your narrativization. So the cop says, hey, you're too close to my fucking car. You're impeding on my ability to perform my duties. You need to disperse and get the fuck out of the roadway. And then these ladies said, yes, sir. And they turned around and walked to the sidewalk, and then the officer just shoved them for no fucking reason?
Yes. That's from what I remember watching.
Bullshit.
Okay, well then let's find the video. Hold on, I'm trying to find the...
Do you walk backwards towards sidewalks from the roadway? Is that how you walk?
I mean, if I'm still shouting at somebody, I might.
Okay.
You can't push somebody for shouting at you. That's not illegal.
Okay, but you can push somebody if you're trying to get them to disperse for committing a previous crime, 18 U.S.C. 111.
I don't even know if they were committing a previous crime at that point. I'm not even sure if that's been established, but...
You might say it's not established, but do you think that that officer believed that he had the right to detain or disperse them based on that statute?
No.
Okay, so he's doing it for fun. He just likes...
He's doing it because he's mad.
Okay.
So, like, here's So here's this. I'm linking you this here, okay? This is a fucking...
Are you sending it to me in a direct message?
Yeah, this is a dog shit short video, but I'm just... Because it shows the start here. If you can find the full one or whatever. But, like, this is my understanding of the first, like, big shove when Pretti puts himself in front of her. At this point, like, wow, she's standing... Like, there's a car. I don't know. I think that car is parked. There's, like, a car behind her. This car looks like it's parked here. Like, what is he dispersing her from? He's mad because she's still shouting at him.
The roadway.
That's her standing in the roadway.
Yes. If it's concrete, it's a road. You see how there's like a car there? Like where cars travel?
It's parked. I think that car is parked.
And does that make it not a road anymore?
Is it like whack-a-mole? If I park on the side of the street and a cop is standing there, when I get out, do I have to like run as quickly as possible? Because as soon as I start the car, the cop could run and shove me?
No, but is there a substantive difference? This is where I do feel like we're just going to get wrapped in an axle, but that's okay.
Well, she's no longer obstructing. Well, if we talk about 18, if we talk about 18 USC, no, it's gonna be a wacky hypothetical. If we talk about your 18 USC 111 or whatever, right? What is she obstructing at this point? He's not. He's on the other side of the road.
She's been given a lawful order to disperse,
and she did.
No, she didn't. She's still in the fucking roadway.
She's not being told disperse from all roadways. She's being told if she was...
You don't know what she was ordered to do because we haven't fucking heard it.
Do you think he could have ordered her walk until you die?
No, but I think he could say, fuck off and get out of the road.
I don't think... Why the fuck would he have the right to say that as a fucking federal officer?
Because if we take a look at it, so I know Officer Nasty is saying, well, forcible, according to the 8th Circuit, applies to all the terms, and therefore, you know, they don't have a detention authority at all. But if we actually look up the statute, it says, like, forcibly impede, instruct, resist, intimidate, et cetera, Yes. And if we can agree, I know you're smart enough that I could isolate these subcomponents, okay? So we could agree, well, hold on. Let's just see if we can make it further then. So at that point, if we have impede, intimidate, obstruct, whatever, ICE federal law enforcement officers, and he can articulate how they're impeding, obstructing, intimidating, whatever, then at that point he has detention authority and he has the ability to disperse them. I don't believe
you get both. I don't think you always have the right to just shove somebody around when you could arrest them. I don't agree with that.
That's a different statement.
Well, you said detainment and disbursement, and you're using disbursement as a stand-in for just push somebody around.
Well, okay, so let's talk about that. Let me bring up a personal anecdote. So one of the reasons why I got frustrated when you were debating the fat MAGA guy is because it sounded like you didn't think that law enforcement officers have the ability to detain or disperse.
I didn't say that, and that's not what it sounded like. What I said is that if you're dispersing, when you're talking about like a crowd especially, it's not just a single person that you're shoving to the ground.
Okay, so let me bring up my specific example.
Okay.
So in my specific example, I was called to Walmart for a recently fired employee who they wanted trespassed from the location, but they did not want her to be incarcerated because they were basically thinking like, well, she's had a bad day. She's been fired. We don't want her to go to jail. Okay. So, but she's refusing to leave, which is a crime, which is trespass after warning. Okay. So I show up on scene and I say, ma'am, you know, the Walmart staff has notified me that
By
you're
the way,
trespassing.
just as a quick fucking meme for chat, that's a really retarded thing, is to call the cops but say, I don't want this person arrested. Depending on the situation, sometimes it's out of the cop's hands, and also it's not your call once the police officers arrive. That's a really dumb thing to do.
Well, that's why I would say I was Officer McFriendly, okay? And
Sure.
I ordered this lady to disperse instead of detaining her because there's something called officer discretion.
Yeah.
So I got this lady's information. I got the trespass done. And then I told her, hey, you need to leave. And she's like, fuck you. She's like, fuck you. You don't have authority. You can't tell me where to go. This is a public place. And I'm like, no, I do. This is private. They've told me that they want you trespassed. You are trespassed. If you refuse to leave, I can incarcerate you.
Yes.
Okay? She's like, no, fuck you. You don't have that authority.
Okay.
And so what I do is I start walking towards her, similar to the way these ICE agents were walking to these women. She starts retreating. And I say, you need to leave. You need to leave. You need to leave. And she's like, no, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. You can't do shit. You can't do shit. You can't do shit.
Mm-hmm.
And so what ends up happening is her mom shows up because she's like 18 or 19 at the time.
Her mom
and
is?
Her mom,
Hot.
like,
I'm just
what's
kidding.
that?
Go ahead.
Fuck you. Okay, so her mom shows up. And I'm like, ma'am, you need to take your daughter because right now she's refusing to leave after trespass after warning. I could detain her, but I'm trying to get her to leave. And so her mom eventually talks to her and gets her to leave. So the point of that is that there's a minor crime.
Wait,
okay?
how did this have? There's no relationship whatsoever.
Hold on, I want to finish this concept. The first time that she said, fuck you, you don't have authority to tell me where to go, I'm not going anywhere, I could have said, turn around, put your hands behind your back.
Correct, but you couldn't have just pushed her to the ground.
Resisting without violence.
Wait,
And
you couldn't have, but you couldn't, but if she said, fuck you, I'm not leaving, you couldn't say, well, fuck you, boom, and just push her. You can't do that. You can arrest her if you want.
I probably could have said, fuck you, boom, and then like,
okay, I'm sorry, you couldn't have said no words and just shoved her. You can't do that.
Hold on. But I absolutely could have put my hands on her in order to escort her out of the building. 100%. And by the way, the shove is going to be like, I would, because I'm a nice person who was trained to treat people that I'm interacting with as if they're members of my family, I could grab a wrist or an elbow and escort them out of the building. Or I could put my hands up to at shoulder level and I could gently walk with them while pushing them out of the building. Or if I was a sociopath,
none of these things,
and I had sand in my vagina, then I could push them, and if they trip, that's on fucking them. It's all considered hands-on. Pushing aggressively, pushing gently, and grabbing somebody by their wrist and elbow is all considered hands-on.
Okay. I think you fully agree with me 100%. I think the fact that every example you bring up is so unrelated, I think means that you fully agree with me 100%.
Wait, no,
so unless you have a different, you haven't brought nothing that you brought up
is making a point that you yourself have already conceded, which is effectively that an officer has the ability to force somebody to disperse or be detained, right?
Yeah, that's not a disagreement though. I think we fully agree.
Okay.
I think we fully agree, and that's why.
Do you think that this officer thinks that he has the right to either force these people to disperse or be detained?
Disbursement here would be within the narrow confines of however she was obstructing or interfering with whatever operation they're doing, which at this point, I'm not even sure if there was one. I don't even know if that was the case, because I think that was just a field office on the other end of the street, okay? So it would be that. It wouldn't entail him banning her from the public street in front of the ICE building. So, no, I don't think he had the right to shove her to the ground outside there.
Okay, because I've already cited 18 USC 111, which is vague, very vague. That does give law enforcement officers detention authority for obstruction, impeding, intimidating, whatever.
Why did you just say that? Wait, I don't understand why you just said that. He didn't detain her. He assaulted her.
That's irrelevant. You already agreed with me that he has the authority to detain or
disperse. Disperse doesn't mean just randomly assault somebody.
If you have somebody who's violated a crime, I could have gently pushed that lady out of Walmart and would have been within my rights to do so.
I don't know if that's, I'm not sure if that's true.
It would have been a spectrum.
I think you could have done that as a way to be nice, maybe, in a roundabout way, but I don't know if that's actually true. If she was like, I'm not moving, I don't know if you could just push. I think you might have the authority to arrest her and maybe walk her out that way, but I don't know if you would have the legal authority, or if it's even policy like, just keep pushing her until she's off the grounds.
So where do you think that riot cops derive their authority to fire CS gas and pepper spray people and push people that they then don't subsequently arrest?
Because they're trying to de-escalate a situation that if it continues on the path that it's on is going to get further out of hand, and they're trying to bring a situation under control. And generally speaking, hold on. Generally speaking, I think that those are generally situations of practicality more than like legality. Like if you had a RoboCop that could arrest every single person in a crowd that was being tear gassed, they might have the authority to do it. Sometimes cops do run in and just start fucking arresting people, and I think generally those maybe they stand. I don't know if you need mens rea for the ride or whatever. But
I guarantee you. Before pepper spray is deployed and before CS gas is deployed, there are orders to disperse, and an assembly is declared unlawful before they start doing that stuff. So everybody in the crowd at that point is subject to detention,
sure,
probably under a violation of a municipal statute about unlawful assembly.
Sure.
Okay, so at that point, they're subject to detention or disbursement.
Yes.
So I'm pointing out to you that a cop with a riot shield
with disbursement,
someone,
no.
Get them to disperse, or
you agree with me. You agree with me. I'm glad that we agree. I'm glad that we agree.
That these people have committed crimes.
I agree, and I'm glad that we agree. If there was a crowd of people and you were trying to get somebody to move back, you could use your riot shield to push them. I agree. That's true.
No, I brought up a specific example that I used when I was in law enforcement, where I could have forced somebody to disperse, and it was an individual. There was no.
So
crowd.
If she was on that, so if she was in the Walmart and she didn't want to move. You could push her until she fell over, and then she gets back up, and you push her until she falls over, and she gets back up. You could do that 100 times until she's off the property.
Probably terrible officer tactics, but I think it would be legal.
I don't think so. I think that would just be assault. I think you'd be charged for it.
What are you going to charge me with?
For assaulting a lady. You can't attack somebody just because you're telling them to fuck off. They would say you should arrest them.
Hold on. Let me amend what I just said.
Okay.
Let's say that we're starting at the back of the store,
yeah,
and I'm basically doing like a 6-foot shove to the ground over and over and over again, then eventually, like I would say after the first or second shove, you're probably going to be able to say that this is like excessive force because you have the ability to detain, you have the ability to use a different move that is less likely to cause injury. Therefore, this is excessive force. But what I'm telling you is that like within the scope of going hands-on, a shove, grabbing somebody's wrist, putting somebody in handcuffs, even punching someone in the face, this is all considered the same category of thing.
I don't think you're getting into the crazier hands-on stuff until you're ready to make an arrest or you need to make an arrest. I don't think you're ever using this just to push somebody around. I don't think that's ever happening.
So I want to clarify our disagreement.
Okay.
So you think that this officer, starting in the middle of the roadway, but ending by the side of the roadway in the shoulder, he, at the time of shoving the woman, he does not have the authority to detain and does not have the authority to order these people to disperse.
I think he can do both of those. I don't know about the disperse at this point, but even if I grant the disperse, none of that gives him the authority to just shove her at that point.
I don't agree. And I would challenge you to find a policy or a statute that supports your perspective. Well, you could argue it's excessive force because he's doing something within policy in an unreasonable way. But I don't think you have a law, and I don't think you have a policy that says that when you've ordered somebody
so the law would just be,
you cannot push them.
The law would just be assault, right? I mean, I would check. I guess I would have to go look up case law or whatever.
You are right, because effectively, law
like the only time, hold on, do you watch a lot of cop slap? I'm somewhat of a cop slap connoisseur because I watch a lot of cop slap now. Okay, you watch a lot of cop slap on YouTube?
I love cop slap.
Generally speaking, the only time I've ever seen a cop shove somebody is when there's a person being incredibly obstinate that he's trying to take to the ground to arrest. Like that's part. I have never in my life seen a cop be like, "You need to leave." Well, I'm not going to leave. Oh yeah. Ugh! I've never seen. I don't know if I've ever seen that in a cop video ever, except the one where Alex Pretti gets assassinated. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. Is this something that you think you commonly see, where the cop's like, "You got to get off the property, ma'am"? She's like, "Well, I don't want to get off." Oh yeah. Well, what about now? I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Okay, and what do you have that backs up the fact that this is either a violation of policy or a violation of legality? And by the way, hold on, there's something important that I need to articulate that I think you articulated well that is true. Law enforcement officers are still subject to the same laws as citizens. However, they're given broader latitude in order to engage in what would otherwise be crimes in the performance of their law enforcement duties. So you're right that if you just like shove somebody randomly and there's no law enforcement purpose to said action, then you technically could be charged with battery or assault. That's totally true. But what this officer is going to say, and once again, I'm willing to bet $50 on multiple things in reference to this thing, is that he's going to say that I believe that these people were in violation of 18 USC 111. I gave them lawful orders to disperse. They refused to disperse. They were still in the roadway. Therefore, in order to force them to disperse and go to the sidewalk, I, gave them a push, And then at that point, Alex Pretti stepped in and rubbed my belly with his left hand, which I construed as assault on a law enforcement officer. Therefore, I decided that detention was warranted at that time, and I placed XYZ person under detention, and then I notified, Pretti that he was under detention as well. And that's not going to be...
Okay, hold on. Can you see...
Once again, I'll bet like $50 they're not getting charged. I'll bet another $50 if they are charged, they're not getting incarcerated.
Okay, watch my thing. What? Can you see my stream
Watching.
On Discord?
Yes, watching.
Okay. So I'll be generous. I don't even know here if he has a right to tell them to disperse, because I don't know if there's some lawful operation or thing happening here. I'll grant it, I guess, but I actually don't even know at this point. And if I was having a super formal argument on this, I don't even think I would grant this.
Okay, so Pisco and I had this argument real quick.
Okay.
So 18 USC 111 has all the verbiage that I've already said. Forcibly, resisting, impeding, obstructing, threatening, et cetera, et cetera. Okay.
Okay.
Now, what Pisco has said is that the 8th Circuit has applied the adjective forcible to all of those descriptors, meaning that, like, you have to be able to articulate, like, physical force, I suppose.
Sure. What I'm going to assume that it means, and I know I'm right, even without knowing any law or any case law, what I'm going to assume is when they use these broad descriptors, the reason why they're doing it is because having a 6'8" guy in front of you screaming at you, like, doing this, probably easily passes the threshold of, like, intimidation or harassment, right? But if he would have said, well, I didn't touch him, we say, well, bullshit, you're obviously obstructing. Like, the officer can't be reasonably expected to obstruct. That's my guess. It's not there, though, to cover 5'2" white wine moms that are holding a cell phone 20 feet away saying, fuck you, ICE, I hate you. I don't think it's meant to cover them. My guess.
Maybe not. But once again, I would say that they could and will charge under 18 USC 111, and I would be surprised if they were found for excessive force or any kind of detention, to be honest. And I don't think that's just because it's a Trump administration. I would argue that this would still be true under a Biden admin as well. The Biden admin just wouldn't have ICE agents being this aggressive and causing these scenarios in the first place.
Okay. So you're watching my stream, right?
Yes, I am watching the stream.
On Discord, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So here, I don't know if there's an operation going on. I don't know if you and Pisco figure this out or whatever. Looks like she's talking, shouting at the guy. Doesn't seem like there's an operation going on. I'm not entirely sure. Okay, we see Alex Pretti here in the street.
Doesn't that look like she already got pushed once right there, too?
I think she might have.
Yeah.
But at this point...
Like before this.
Sure. Yeah, I think she did. I think we see that in another video. But at this point, she's away... Sure. At this point, she's away from the car. What's he doing here? If he wants to arrest her, then go for it. But why is he... At this point, she's away from the car. What do you want to do? Like, why did...
No. So hold on. You're asking the question, and I want to answer it earnestly. So, if this, once again, 90% this cop has sand in his vagina, 10% he's serving a law enforcement purpose, okay? If this was a busier roadway, not only do I think that you would be able to articulate violations under 18 USC 111 that would allow you to disperse or detain said people, but I also think that you could articulate dangers of being in the roadway, where you're saying, like, not only are these people forcibly threatening or whatever the fuck you want to say in order to be able to write up the statute, but on top of that, when I lawfully ordered them to disperse, they remained in the roadway, and there were oncoming vehicles posing a hazard of injury to said people.
Are there oncoming vehicles? Are there oncoming vehicles right now that are posing a threat to anybody?
There was one earlier, and it was going 3 miles an hour.
And it drove around.
Weak, but I think it's something that you can articulate. And I think if this was on a highway, they would be perfectly justified.
If it was on a highway, we would be having this conversation because it would be a totally different set of facts. So it seems like not at this point. So he's pushed them or whatever. He pushed her again. Good job. He got him. Okay, nice. Now this lady here, this car, we agree this car is not moving, right?
It's parked. Yep.
Okay. Now this is the one that I just think, why? Like that just seems like assault.
Get out of the roadway. You're saying why?
Wait, you just said she's parked. This car is parked here.
What does that have to do with the definition of a fucking road? Get the fuck out of the roadway.
So he's enforcing the don't stand in front of parked cars local ordinance?
At this point, he's probably enforcing the you violated this statute. I'm telling you to disperse. You're not dispersing.
I don't think that to tell somebody to disperse, I don't think you can shove them across the road over and over again. I think you have to decide if you want to make an arrest or if you just want to leave it alone.
Okay, I disagree with you, and I would challenge you to find a statute or a policy that says that you cannot use force in order to get people to disperse.
Well, that policy won't exist because typically when you're talking about getting people to disperse, you're talking about crowds of people.
Okay, so then you're kind of talking about an ought that's not codified.
I think it's just codified in assault. He would need a reason to shove her. I don't know what the reason is.
Okay, what do you think? What do you think the likelihood is that he's going to be charged with assault either at the state or federal level?
Again, I would say low, but because of political reasons, not because of criminal reasons. So I do the same 10-50 bet. $10 he gets charged, $50 he gets convicted.
Biden admin.
What?
Let's say that this scenario was identical and we were under the Biden admin. What do you think the chances are of him getting charged with assault at the federal level by the Biden administration?
This is the guy that shot twice before. I would say 85%.
I would say less than 1%.
Okay.
Sorry, just to be clear, you're saying that there's an 85% chance
that he'd be charged with some kind of crime here. Yeah.
Shoved a civilian out of the roadway, that there's an 85% chance that the Biden admin would charge said officer with assault.
I would reject the syntax there of out of the roadway. She's not standing in the roadway. She's standing in front of a parked car.
It's a fucking road.
Do you think right now, this officer would be within his rights to go double dragon and just like start kicking and shoving all of these people who are standing in the road? Pretti, the other woman, this woman, if he had like 4 arms, he could just like Machamp, he could just start shoving all of them to the sidewalk.
But I'm telling you that from a use of force perspective, a push, a punch, and grabbing somebody by their wrist and elbow is all considered the same shit.
I don't think so. I disagree with that.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is. What policy or what statute do you have that says otherwise?
I can't look it up on the spot. We could come back. We could look up, and I would be shocked if there's any use of force continuum that says if you're trying to get somebody to move or you're trying to gain control of a situation, you can punch them or push them.
A push and a punch is considered like almost, well, I don't know about a punch specifically, but a push is 100% considered at the bottom of the use of force continuum. Like the use of force continuum, passive resistance allows you to go hands-on and use pepper spray.
Okay.
Active resistance allows you to go hands-on, use pepper spray, and tase. Violent resistance, but non-deadly force violent resistance, allows you to do everything, including the baton, except for the pistol. And then deadly force lets you use the pistol. So saying that a push is not at the passive resistance part of the use of force continuum is not accurate to my
Do you think
knowledge.
you could find me...
You to find something that says otherwise.
Well, I can't find a negative. Do you think you could find me the positive of that in any federal or state enforcement manual that says this is when you push somebody?
Yeah, I could probably just go grab my my municipal policy book. Yeah.
Okay. Then if you do this, or if you look at this up later, I'd be curious to see it, because maybe I would change my mind if this is in fact the case. But when you do this, because if you do this, I have a feeling I already know where it's going to go. You're going to read part of it. It's going to be talking about dealing with crowds of people. When this is like a last resort, you have no other way to gain control of the situation. Or it's going to be talking about in the process of making an arrest.
Nope. You could just Google use of force continuum, and this is something that's been almost universally adopted nationwide.
Okay, I'll go do some reading.
Okay. I probably have to dip in 10. I am having fun. I want to do more, but I'm an old man with a family, so I might have to dip in 10.
Sure. I'm just reading from the NIJ, the National Institute of Justice.gov. This is from 2009, so maybe we've gotten more violent since then. I don't know. Most law enforcement agencies have policies that guide the use of force. These policies describe an escalating series of actions an officer may take to resolve a situation. This continues generally at many levels. Officers are instructed to respond with the level of force appropriate to the situation at hand. Acknowledging the officer may move from one part of the continuum to another in a matter of seconds. I would say that no matter what, it was obviously an inappropriate escalation of force. I don't think he needed to shove her, but okay. An example of a use of force continuum follows. Officer present, no force is used. Consider the best way to resolve a situation. The mere presence of a law enforcement officer works to deter crime or diffuse a situation. Officers' attitudes are professional and non-threatening. Verbalization. Force is not physical. Officer issues calm, non-threatening commands such as, let me see your identification or registration. Officers may increase their volume and shorten commands in an attempt to gain compliance. Short commands might include stop or don't move. Empty hand control. Officer uses bodily force to gain control of a situation. Soft technique. Officer uses grabs, holds, and joint locks to restrain an individual. That makes sense to me. Hard technique. Officer uses punches and kicks to restrain an individual. That also makes sense to me. We have less lethal methods. Officers use less lethal techniques to gain control of a situation. Blunt impact. Officer may use a baton or projectile to immobilize a combative person. Makes sense. Chemical. Officers may use chemical sprays or projectiles embedded with chemicals to restrain an individual. Makes sense. Conducted energy devices. Officers may use CEDs to immobilize an individual. CEDs discharge a high voltage, low amperage jolt of electricity at a distance. And then lethal force. They may use lethal weapons to gain control of the situation. Should only be used if a suspect poses here. Okay. I don't know in what part of this you're just shoving people around.
Okay. Well, what I would say is if you scroll up to above less lethal.
Okay.
Go to empty hand control.
Yeah.
So exactly what I told you. Sorry, can you just scroll up just like an inch? Yes, there we go. So what I would say is soft versus hard technique are both under the same umbrella of empty hand control. And so these things are articulated as things that you can do at the passive level.
What?
Now,
hold on, wait, hold on.
I don't think striking people...
Hold on. Have you ever seen a YouTube video called The Protagonist Throw?
I have not.
So it's a thing in action movies that when you see it, you can't unsee it, and it's very annoying, okay? But basically, in every single action movie, okay, and you're a man who's seen combat, okay? Probably more than me. Well, mine have just been all DV situations. So, okay, in a situation where you're fighting somebody and you clearly have the upper hand, all right? You clearly have the upper hand, and this happens so many times in movies. What the antagonist always does is he takes the protagonist and he throws them to the other side of the room. And this is stupid for 50 million reasons. Because if you have control, you would just hold them and kill them or do whatever, right? And when you throw them...
and it's like a gargantuan monster that could kill you in a single punch, but they keep throwing them.
Yes. All of the techniques that are listed here are to gain control of or restrain an individual. Shoving somebody away does the exact opposite of that. None of these techniques...
You think punches restrain an individual?
Officers use punches and
kicks restrain an individual.
Officers use punches and kicks to restrain an individual. As per the thing listed here, yes. If they're heavily combative, you might have to fight. Yeah.
Okay, but what I'm saying is that so this didn't pull what I wanted it to pull, but it still pulled enough that I still think it's accurate to what we're talking about. Can you Google the term passive, active, violent resistance? Can you just type those terms into your Google search and see what pops?
Yep.
I kind of want more than just passive, like if it actually shows the entire continuum. But if you want to click on the first one and just see where we get, that's totally fine.
Method involves deliberately disobeying such laws to advocate for change or to secure concessions from authorities, often associated with civil disobedience. Passive resistance emphasizes peaceful protest and the moral obligation to challenge unjust regulations, blah, blah, blah.
Can you type in like passive resistance use of force?
Hold on, wait. This thing just popped up for Vermont legislature. I understand. So passive resistance. This looks like it comes from some cop thing. Proposed language to use in CEW model policy. A subject refuses with little or no physical activity to appropriately respond to the officer. Examples include subjects who offer little or no physical or mechanical resistance upon contact, but who refuse to act or respond to an officer's attempt to take him or her into custody, stand back or walk when directed, or stand when or walk where directed, or put their hands behind their back as directed. Passive resistance are often present during public demonstrations or other lawful protests. Passive resistance is such, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Contact controls. Measures designed to gain compliance or take custody of passively resistant subjects include, but are completely limited to, verbal commands. This is fucking cut off. Hold on. Seriously? Wait, maybe I can copy paste it. Okay, maybe we can guess what the words are. That are completely limited to verbal commands, low level. I'm guessing this is physical control techniques, such as a compliant or non-compliant escort, non-forceful physical guidance, or other low-level physical control techniques, such as a front or rear wrist lock. The use of OC spray, a CEW impact weapon, police something, empty hand strikes, and body strikes and or takedowns are strictly prohibited. Now, this is just a suggested language, so maybe this didn't make it in, but this seems to kind of jive with what I was saying, I think. I don't think you're going to find anything.
It kind of jives with what you're saying, but then you're saying like a push is equivalent to like a kick or a punch.
I would say almost worse, but yeah. All right, it's in that ballpark. Like, okay. By the time you're pushing people, in my mind as a police officer, from all the stuff I've seen, if you're pushing, kicking, or punching, it's because the other person is like, we're fucking fighting, let's go. Somebody's dying, or we're fighting, and you're trying to arrest the person. I don't think a cop can just be like, you're fucking annoying. Ugh!
Yeah, it's not you're fucking annoying. It's you've committed a crime, and I want you to disperse, or you're under detention.
Yeah, but you can't make somebody move like that as a cop. You can arrest them.
What do you mean I can't make somebody move like that as a cop?
As in, you can't just shove somebody around because you're a police officer. You have the authority to arrest them if you think they're breaking the law that much and they're refusing to obey orders.
Wait, but Stephen, you're asserting this, and it's just not true.
Okay.
So, for instance, like when law enforcement officers are creating a crime scene and they're setting up like caution tape, and there's a ton of people just standing around milling about, and they're being told to fuck off, and they don't fuck off. You're saying cops can't push those people in order to get them to move?
If they're literally about to infringe on like the crime scene, then yeah, they could. But like this is like
and then are all those people subject to detention immediately thereafter because they refused a lawful command and they were pushed?
They could be, yeah.
No, could be. I'm saying, are they? And
when you say, are they subject? I'm sorry, stop. When you say, are they subject to? My understanding is, would the cop have the legal authority to? Or I'm sorry, would the cop do it? Whether or not he has the legal authority to, would he do it? Is obviously this can differ from cop to cop. But in my mind, if a cop is ever shoving somebody, then they're over the threshold of being arrestable.
They are over. Well, that's my argument to you, is that these people are over the threshold of being arrestable.
Sure. But if he wants to arrest him, that's fine. But the cop...
I need to articulate this.
You're just going to say the same thing you've said a million times.
I need to articulate this. They are over the threshold of being arrestable. However, it's up to an officer's discretion on who he detains and who he doesn't detain.
Yeah, but if you decide not to detain somebody, that doesn't mean you can assault them.
Amount of force in order to get people
That's not the minimum amount of force.
In line with his purview.
He's not the minimum. That's not the minimum amount of force.
Do you want to go back and read your empty hand statement again?
Sure.
And by the way, we should probably look up the specific guidance for federal officers, but I'll read the empty hand control
is officers use grabs, holds, and joint locks to restrain an individual, or punches and kicks to restrain an individual. My guess is that
I think the use of the word restrain is silly here, but that's okay. I actually meant the
hold on. This is what you're missing, because it's not silly, because that's what you're doing as a cop. You're restraining somebody. You're not just beating people up. Cops aren't just there to like, whoa, I'm going to fuck you up.
Hold on,
you're saying that the cop here in his job, he can just fuck this woman up because she's breaking the law. You can't fuck people up. You can arrest them. No,
you're making up. Hold on. You and I are, and also I wanted to go to the thing where it's like, aggressive techniques like XYZ ABC are strictly prohibited. That's the one that I wanted to take a look at. But so hold on. I go into a boxer stance and I punch you in the face. Has me punching you in the face restrained you?
It depends on what's going on.
Okay. The answer is no.
Hold on, stop. No, stop. Hold on. You're contorting yourself into such weird things. If you come to arrest me, you are. If you come to arrest me and I throw up my mitts and I go, all right, let's go. Could you punching me be a part of your detaining of me?
100%.
Yes. Okay. So then when you ask me, is punching somebody partly a part of like arresting them? Yeah, it can be. Yeah, for sure. Cops get into fights with people. Yes.
Okay. We might be talking past each other. I'm reading this perhaps autistically. Officers use punches and kicks to restrain an individual. Okay?
Yes, as part of somebody that's being combative that you're trying to arrest.
Like the lay definition of restrain, but when I think of kicking someone, at the end of that kick, they are not restrained.
But it's part of a...
They're not restrained. Yes, I understand. I'm being autistic. It's the through line to obtain compliance so you can restrain a person.
Yeah.
I understand. We're talking past each other. Okay. Please go to the other thing that said like this, and this are strictly prohibited.
Sure. And to be fair, this was a suggested language for, in Vermont, a proposed language to some.
We should probably actually look at like federal use of force documentation, but I'm okay to work with this as like a preliminary framework.
Okay. Well, also this is just I mean, okay.
Yeah. Can you just read what at the passive resistance stage? Can you read what's permitted and what's prohibited?
At the passive stage, measures designed to gain compliance or take custody of passively resistant subjects include, but are completely limited to, verbal commands, low-level physical control techniques such as a complaint or, I'm guessing this is probably supposed to be compliant, such as a compliant or non-compliant escort, non-forceful physical guidance, or other low-level physical control techniques such as a front or rear wrist lock.
Okay. So what I'm saying is we can look up the specific federal guidelines. But what I'm saying is a push, even though this was obviously a hardcore push, is going to fall under the quote unquote lower level empty handed techniques. Because a punch and a kick, in my opinion, are going to be infinitely more likely to cause injury than a push. Now you can say context dependent, right? Because if you shove somebody over a sidewalk, they trip on the curb and they smash their face into concrete, you obviously caused injury through a push. However, like I would say, putting my arms up and gently pushing that woman outside of Walmart, that's obviously not likely to result in injury. So yes, the officer is ass mad. But what I'm telling you is the policy is going to recognize push, and it's not going to differentiate between like, gentle push versus hard push. That's like a level of nuance not captured by the policy.
I think that it would absolutely be recognized that if two kids were like going at it, or like a husband and wife or whatever, and a cop was like standing in between or like holding somebody back or pushing somebody back, that's going to be seen way differently contextually than this ass-paying cop like chasing this woman across the street, shoving her over and over again for the third time. Like he's not gaining control, and I mean it's evidenced by the outcome. He's not gaining control of the situation. Everything is getting even further out of control of the situation here.
Well, hold on. Now I'm going to be a dick. Does punching someone in the face help you gain control of a subject?
If they're resisting arrest, it could, yeah.
Okay, hold on. Is somebody on the ground easier to gain control over than somebody who's standing up?
Yes.
Can I leg sweep somebody as a law enforcement officer if I plan on detaining them?
Well, it's a little John Wick, but probably, yeah.
Okay, so at this point, she's on the ground, so she's easier to detain, right? And as we've already established, not at the passive level, but at some level, you're allowed to punch and kick people in order to gain compliance, so you can restrain them.
Do you
right?
see the? Hold on. Do you see? Wait. Do you see the trick you just played there? Wait. You see the trick? You see the trick? You see the trick that you just played there, Connor? Come on,
yes,
you heard it. Yes,
I did that trick on purpose. Yes.
Because she wasn't being active. If I get pulled over, my license plates are expired. Okay. This happened to me, and the cop said, "Get out of the car." And I get out, and when I stand up, she punches me in the face. And she says, "Well, Connor, this helped me arrest him, didn't it?" It's like, yeah, but the guy wasn't physically resisting. She was not physically resisting the officer in any way that gave rise to her being shoved, 6 feet away into the sidewalk.
Well, I think you're being imprecise with your terms, because passive resistance can still be considered physical, even if they're not like active and passive. Passive is still physical. So if I stand in front of you, plant myself in the ground, you tell me to put my hands up and I refuse to do so, and I actually impede you from moving in a certain direction, it's still physical. I'm just not like forcible against you.
My guess would be, and here's the thing, that if you can find me a policy of this, then I'll say, okay. If you are, if you have a person who is just like refusing to move, my guess is you have the option to either arrest them or ignore them. I don't know if you can just shove them into the ground. I don't know if that's like an option that police officers have. You can just start shoving everybody. Like we've brought the shover boys, and they've all come to shove all the civil disobedience people, to keep shoving them away until they're gone, like a bulldozer.
I would argue this gets back to whether or not officers have discretion to disperse or detain. And my answer is yes. Your answer is no.
No,
What
that's
I'll
not true.
do-
I would agree. I think that they totally have the ability to disperse or detain. So, like, if he was doing something really important, I don't know what the fuck it could be, but if he was doing something really important here at his car and she's like right up in his face and he like pushes her back, he's like, get the fuck away from me, like get back, excuse me, or whatever. Then okay, sure, I get it. But the triple double dragon push into the smashing her face into the sidewalk, shoving her 6 feet across the street. At that point, contextually, well, I don't know what he's defending. I don't know what situation he's trying to gain control over. Seems like he's just really fucking mad at the woman. Maybe he hates white people. These two people who are Hispanic, right? Maybe that is the great replacement is happening. And Lauren and Fuentes and everybody were right. Or JD Vance and all the Stephen Miller, all the new wave of white replaced people are right. And maybe he's just trying to kill white people. But I don't know. The pushing across the street multiple times, that's just crazy to me.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to do, because I'm already 8 minutes late to something that I have to do,
Okay.
I will find you I'll try to find the specific federal use of force continuum that includes like active and passive resistance for your review. And then barring that, I'll try to find something that backs up what I've said specifically. But once again, I would back up everything that I've said today by the chances of Renee Good, officer, getting charged, I would put at $50. I would also pay $50 if they were convicted. And then same here with the Pretti shooting. We didn't get to the shooting yet, so I mean, we could revisit this another day. But basically, like, I would bet $50 that these guys are not going to get charged. I would bet another $50 that if they're charged, they're not going to get incarcerated.
Sure.
Now,
I like
that has
to,
nothing
in
to
my
do with
mind,
morality.
I focus a lot on the lead up here because I am a big fuck around and find out guy. If there's like officers that are making seemingly like an incredibly lawful arrest and you decide to intervene in that circumstance in any way physically, even if that just means like putting your body there, I think that's pretty wild on a civilian side. But I feel like this Alex Pretti guy like tried to do almost like the optimal cuckoldry shit. Maybe he shouldn't have moved as close to the officer. I'm not even sure if he touched the officer. He's doing fucking jazz hands.
Do you want to play that real quick? Just real quick.
What?
Just like the whole when the Pretti almost or doesn't make contact with the officer and then he does his jazz hands.
Sure. I need the footage from the front of the car.
Oh, I thought that was it. If that's not it, it's not a big deal. We could do this.
Well, you have to see the footage from the front of the car because from this perspective, people will argue that he did touch the cop. You can't really see it, like right here.
Doesn't it look like he grabs his belly there for a second?
It kind of does from this angle, but I think from the front of the car, I think that it's I don't know if the guy ever even touched him.
Okay.
Wait, real quick, hold on. It'll take me 2 seconds. Somebody link me this real quick. You motherfuckers have all the most retarded fucking links all the time. Link me what I'm asking for. Motherfuckers in chat. Car footage, Pretti shooting. Hold on. Oh, thank you. We need to bring back the trusted flyer, okay? Whoever does my flyers.
All right, so this is the start of the confrontation. What I hear in the video, which we just, one says, do not push them into the traffic. The other responds, I'm pushing them.
Okay, so here he shoves the lady, and then this is where Pretti intervenes. I don't know if he ever touches the cop. Like,
yeah, let's see that real quick. And then I'm looking for like the belly rub. That's what
it would have been right here. This is
well. So hold on. So was the belly rub before the jazz hand?
Like no, it would have been like right.
The other responds,
here's the big shove. That's the big shove, and then this is when Pretti goes over to her, and then is kind of in front of the cop. But it would happen like I don't know if he ever even touched the cop.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, can you rewind frame by frame just to right before the jazz hand or whatever? I think that we're off by like a millimeter to actually see it. And by the way, like I could articulate that like anytime you touch a cop, it's like battery on a law enforcement officer or whatever. But obviously, it's like it's pussy shit. You know, somebody touches your fucking belly or whatever. Yeah, maybe like, hey, fuck off, buddy. Like you're gonna get detained now because you touched my belly. But realistically, like, you know, should you get so fucking ass pained? Probably not. But yeah, like this is where we have like the legal distinctions that I get frustrated by. because according to Pisco, the officer would have to be in fear. Okay, hold on. Let me caveat this, because he got mad last time I misrepresented his position. So let me say that this is my understanding of what Pisco was saying in reference to assault. What he was saying, that even if Mr. Pretti gently touched the officer, he didn't have not only did he not have the requisite intent to do battery or assault on a law enforcement officer, but it would be unreasonable for the law enforcement officer to infer hostility from Mr. Pretti's actions. And I don't think that's true at all. So
so this is part of why I think I don't divorce the legal from the ethical as much. I think that when you start acting in certain ways, I think that it's going to dramatically change how you should perceive the other people around you. Like, if I walk in, if there's a woman in front of me, and me and my cop friend walk in, and there's 10 men in the room, and we're like, we have to arrest this woman, and we walk towards the woman, and we go to arrest her, right? There's two ways that all the men in the room could respond. They could just sit there and watch, or they could all get up, and they could start, like, approaching, and it's like, okay, this is about to be a bad situation. I have good reason to believe that these guys are about to, fuck shit up, because they don't want me to arrest this woman. As opposed to, if you walk into a room and you're like, I'm here to arrest this woman, and then your cop friends are fucking wailing on her, and the guys get up, it's harder at that point to know, like, well, are they getting up because they want to fuck us up, or are they just genuinely concerned about the well-being of the woman? Because now your behavior has impacted significantly the perceptions and the behaviors of the other people around you. And I think that's meaningfully...
I think on a human level, that's logical to infer, yes.
Okay. Well, you said words there, but yeah, okay. All right. Okay.
No, but then my beef is we end up back at legality. But I am 15 minutes late. I'll be happy to spar about this again. I'm happy we were able to spar in a way that we were contentious without being shitty. So I had fun, and I hope you had fun too.
I always have fun fighting with you. I love you, Connor. Be careful.
Right. Bye, buddy.
Bye. Get a load of this guy. Got him. I've pushed people away from police tape/crime scenes without arresting. It's pretty normal to push people when you can arrest, but you soft up my hands to push people away to either prevent a crime or protect other officers, such people, etc. Listen, I'm not going to argue with you that might be the case. I don't think that's necessarily even a bad thing. Like, I'm just saying that we're going to look at the context of this happening. If there's like a person who's like, fucking peeking over a police line, or you're trying to look at some shit going on like around an ambulance or whatever, and you're a cop, and you're like, yo, get the fuck back, and you shove this guy back, maybe even harder than shit. It's like, okay, fine, or whatever. But that is going to be treated holistically way differently than this thing of the guy running across the street. I also think that his actions afterwards inform a lot for how we feel about that shove too. Because if he would have shoved her, and then the Pretti guy, comes up, and then he, and the cop's like, whatever, and he fucking walks back to the street, it's a fucking bitch or whatever, and it's like, wow, what a dick, asshole fucking cop. But the fact that the cop is like, not only did he shove her, he's got the OC spray out, he's just fucking letting him, he's not even using it correctly, he's just fucking spraying him fucking down. Well, I was like, okay, damn, now it seems like the guy really did want to fucking fight, okay? And then after he sprays and disengages, and Alex is turned around, he's still fucking spraying him, he's still letting it go. And I was like, okay, Jesus, why? And then now after the guy's fallen over, now he's trying to like yank the dude over to, I guess, make an arrest or something. And now all of his cover, like, this is like escalation after escalation after escalation after escalation. And then on top of that, I didn't notice this the first time. I'm glad I didn't know this on day one. I'm so glad, because I would be banned from Twitter. The same cop that was pepper spraying and started all of this, I believe, was the cop who, after the first 4 shots were fired, regardless of what you think about them, was the same cop that stepped back and fired like 5 or 6 more shots after everything was done. That was the same cop. From start to finish, looking at that like, I think the later behavior massively informs how I feel about his beginning behavior. Fuck all that shit. That would be where my mind is. Jesus.